A warm welcome to our panelists and attendees of the webinar Applying Digital Documentation for Sustainable Heritage Preservation and Management, held as part of ECROM lecture series. Pleased to introduce myself, Rohit Jigyasu, Project Manager at ECROM, and my colleague, Mr. Hirofumi Ikawa, who is on secondment from the Japanese Agency for Cultural Affairs. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, ECROM, the International Center for the Study of Preservation and Restoration of Cultural Property, is the intergovernmental organization working in service to its 137 member states for promoting conservation of all forms of heritage in every region of the world. Digital documentation is widely recognized as a tool for risk management of cultural heritage exposed to disasters caused by natural hazards such as earthquakes, floods, and fires, as well as environmental fluctuations and war damage. In recent years, there has also been an increase in the number of projects that utilize cultural heritage for touristic and regional development through successful use of advanced technologies such as virtual reality and augmented reality. In this webinar, we will discuss the challenges and opportunities in applying digital documentation for sustainable heritage conservation and management. Experts practicing such advanced technologies for documentation of cultural heritage are joining us as the panelists. In this webinar, professionals from UK, Ireland, Japan, Mexico, and Spain are going to share their experiences on the use of 3D documentation technologies and also discuss some of the crucial questions. How can we apply documentation in various socio-cultural contexts? How can we update documentation methods considering cutting-edge technology that is available to us these days? How can we make documentation technology affordable? Before I proceed further, may I apprise you of some procedures for housekeeping during this webinar. You can send your queries and comments via Q&A icon that you see at the bottom of the Zoom window. We will take up some questions after the presentations by panelists. However, in case we are unable to answer all the questions due to shortage of time, please do send us an email and we'll surely get back to you. Now I am pleased to invite Professor Mario Santana Quintero, Secretary General ICOMOS, and Professor Carlton Immersive Media Studio, Carleton University. He collaborates extensively on international projects in the field of heritage documentation for the Getty Conservation Institute, UNESCO Arab Regional Center for Heritage, Bahrain Department for Culture and Tourism in Abu Dhabi, ECROM, World Monument Fund, UNDP, and Korea's Cultural Heritage Agency. So without further ado, I now turn the floor over to Mario Santana for his presentation. Mario, over to you, please.
Thank you, Rohit. Just a second. Let me just get the PowerPoint up. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity, Kawas and Rohit, ECROM staff, and my fellow panelists. I feel very honored to be able to share some of my experience throughout these 25 years of professional trajectory in documentation. And I hope that the webinar will be an opportunity to exchange ideas and also to learn from each other. So conservation is a decision-making activity that is based on value-centered approaches, where we identify character-defining elements, we assess the physical condition and the rate of deterioration of heritage places, we evaluate the rehabilitation impact and the sensitivity to change of these sites. We also look at environmental features affecting the integrity, risk preparedness and climate adaptation, the interaction between historic, the urban and environmental context. Heritage is a non-renewable resource, and it's also a legacy to future generations. Documentation has been with us for many years. 50 years ago, Abu Simbel was safeguarded by UNESCO and international partners by being documented, fragmented in pieces, and moved to an alternative place to be safe from the construction, to be flooded by the Aswan Dam construction in Egypt. And here we see Maurice Carbonell, that was actually a predecessor of Rand and many other, like myself, teaching in ICROM between in the 50s and showing how photogrammetry works to document sites. So when we talk about documentation, we always have to ask why we do the documentation, and that can lead us to do the how. And this is coming from the Letelier guiding principles. So records can create a posterity file of those sites in that particular moment where they were documented. They can serve for decision-making. They can be used for interpretation and presentation to promote and to lead to participation and present sites, but also very important to protect, do preventive maintenance, monitoring, and conservation. So we have different levels of documentation, level of details at the site level, or what we call in World Heritage site level, the component level, so a small piece, a building, an archaeological site, or we can also work at the detail level. Here we see some project that we conducted for the Getty Conservation Institute in the Tomb of Nefertari, in which we were looking at cracks. So a historic site record is a technical dossier prepared by historic site recording specialists, and it provides the necessary basic data for conservation and monitoring activities, as well as a posterity record for public archives. And this also comes from our friend Letelier. So we have massive digitalization of historic sites. It's possible now by different means. So we have drones, we have the scanners, we have other technologies that are able to capture this outer surface of the sites relatively quick. If we look at the rough timeline of information systems, we had physical inventories that were conducted by heritage organizations throughout many years. And now we see, for instance, in the emerging part, digital twins, where we create a kind of twin of that particular site. There are different common actors in the use of digital technologies in heritage, such as academia, government, for-profit, intergovernmental organizations, partnerships and research projects, and non-for-profit organizations. The role of technologies, well, we need to develop principles, guidelines, and protocols. Digital technologies might amplify the capacity to present heritage sites, but adopting digital technologies, we should consider also the views of the right holders, the stakeholders of the site, the typology, extent, and nature of that site, the amount of digital data available. Can we give access to visitors who were excluded in the past, or offer universal access using technologies such as virtual reality? Also, we need to assess the type of digital infrastructure available locally and the type of labor availability to conduct this type of technologies. So we have many opportunities. A vast array of digital technologies is available to heritage professionals to conduct our work. Information technologies have been used already to prepare cartography, digital photography, charts, and other illustrations supporting all activities in heritage conservation. Also, during COVID, many meetings and post-COVID meetings have been hosted online, among many other applications. Training now can also be conducted partially remote in certain areas. But with opportunities, there are also threats. So we have an increased pace of development, big data resulting from the activities, the issues of longevity of that digital data to be read in the future, fragmentation, data is all over the place. Can that data also be available in posterity? The quality of the information in provenance, and now with the emphasis of machine learning, automatization of processes that threatens that activity of heritage. So monuments are not, so the digital record should not become the monument. The monument should be preserved. We should not use that terminology called digital preservation or conservation. By digitizing places, we are not fully digitizing the extent of the site. We should also prevent digital colonialism or digital appropriation. When we conduct information, we collect information, we need to respect the right holders and the communities that live there. The issue of longevity again, and the transparency in the interpretation, processing, and so on of that digital data. So we have different levels of interactivity. We can have digital images, AutoCAD files, etc. We can have panoramic photographies, virtual tours, or active virtual reality, augmented reality. But I guess my colleagues are going to talk about this. So let me just drop a little bit faster. We have digital platforms to access these digital media, such as reports, information systems, virtual reality apps, websites, etc. And we have digital tools to collect data, such as cameras, drones, scanners. And then we have visualization headsets and viewers to be able to experience these platforms. And here is an example of our lab when we were showing some of the virtual reality digital storytelling of the Parliament buildings in Canada. So digital workflows involve some planning, acquisition of data, processing, dissemination. In some cases, we use that data to simulate the energy performance of the structural integrity, also to present the sites, and we also need to archive the files. We have different tools, as I was mentioning, And this is, for instance, a tool, a bag that I carry around where we have a laser scanner, a 360 camera, a disto, a tripod, and a digital camera, an iPad with LiDAR. And now we're capable of collecting data from the outer face appearance of the sites rather quickly. And then produce, records like 3D scan videos and point clouds like this one. But I'm sure that my colleagues are going to show you a lot of these. We can do information systems of sites. This is Cyprus, in Paphos in Cyprus. We can also do intangible heritage recording. Here is one student of ours doing the collection with low speed camera of how the traditional timber frame is being cut. And then we can also map very accurately surfaces like paintings, etc. This is one of our students that developed a tool that does this automatically. And then we all have smartphones. With smartphones, we can access, for instance, a database such as the ARCHES system developed by the World Monuments Fund and the Getty Conservation Institute, in which we can develop a platform for heritage inventories, and then we can synchronize the data we collect with our phones with that database. And then we also have tools for life cycle assessment in historic constructions or existing buildings that are being developed open source and widely available for everyone. And we have the portable acquisition, smartphones equipped with LiDAR and color images. Now we can create kind of 3D mesh, maybe not to the extent of quality of other devices, but we can see that portable acquisition is something that is happening. Here we see Joe Kalas, one of our emerging professionals in Lebanon, and he was recording the devastation of the blast in Beirut using drones and photogrammetry to assess the extent of the damage and plan for future interventions. So we see the potential of using these technologies in disaster planning. Or the work of Carmelo Iñácolo using machine learning, connecting different databases to understand the movement of tourists throughout Venice that can make us assess, the heritage impact of massive visitors in one particular site. Also, the heritage recording should be ruled by an ethical framework. This is coming from ICOMOS and the Canadian Association of Heritage Professionals. We have to have an ethical conduct in the way we do our work in historic recording using digital tools. We need to show best practices. We need to respect the cultural heritage, the public and the communities we work for. We also should have good understanding with our fellow colleagues doing heritage recording, and we should have the qualities to do the work. So finally, digital assets produced by information should inform and contribute to the protection of the sites. Digital assets should respect right holders' needs and expectations. Digital assets have shared ownership and therefore share responsibilities. Digital assets should offer opportunities to historic places to be monitored, to present using storytelling and other applications. Producing digital assets should be affordable to the historic places, site custodians, and communities. Digital assets should offer opportunities to communities to participate in the conservation of those sites, and digital assets should transcend over time. So if you allow me, I would like to invite you to the ICOMOS Heritage Documentations Committee, SIPA conference next year in Florence, and this will be a good opportunity to look at the latest developments in research and practice of documentation. And also finally, our ICOMOS own General Assembly that will happen in the fall of 2023, in Sydney, Australia. And there are also some grants being available for emerging professionals coming from low-income countries. So I look forward to meeting you there or in Florence. And well, this is all from me, and looking forward to listen to my fellow colleagues. Back to you, Rohit.
Thank you very much, Mario, for providing us with a comprehensive introduction of digital technologies and their application for documentation, and also how they can be applied in the field of heritage conservation and management. You also very much highlighted the concerns that we must also keep in mind while we use these new technologies that are available to us. So thank you very much once again. Now I would invite Dr. Bernadette Davila. Bernadette is PhD in Architectural Design from Bartlett School of Architecture, University College London, practicing architecture and has a master's in architecture from Catholic University of Chile. Her research includes novel ways of improving heritage intervention of seismic-prone settlements, which started after the 2005 earthquake in Tarapacá, Chile, when she co-founded Tarapacá Project. She also has developed housing strategies via her MA, contributing with her work to Heritage Reconstruction Program of the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development after 2010 earthquake in Chile. So I now turn the floor over to Dr. Bernadette for her presentation.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes, Bernadette, it's all perfect. Please go ahead.
Great. And the presentation is there, right?
Yes, everything is fine. So you can just start to share your presentation.
Thank you very much. Thanks for being interested in this seminar. Today we'll talk about advanced recording technologies for a sustainable reconstruction methodology of heritage settlements affected by earthquakes. I've been studying responses to earthquakes since here, the 2005 earthquake in Tarapacá, Chile, a country that has large magnitude seismic events regularly. Documenting damage is one of the first tasks of reconstruction efforts, back then using hand-measured surveys and measured photographic elevations as this one. Houses in heritage villages of Chile are a sustainable example to their specific climatic conditions, using local resources and vernacular building techniques, such as adobe and quincha. Over the years, the pressure for quick reconstruction has led to a superficial understanding of heritage by offering solutions that look like the previous houses, but without considering other important aspects of their historical value, such as building techniques and human occupation. For the 2005 reconstruction, only new houses were considered. After the 2010 earthquake in Chile, the Heritage Reconstruction Program was created and implemented for the first time, allowing to repair and reinforce houses in heritage areas using the same amount of money as a new one. However, these were not massively extended due to the difficulty to capture the as-built conditions of the constructions after the earthquake. So how can we use this technology for scaling this up? That led me to explore the role of accurate recording technologies in Chilean reconstruction processes in my PhD. Instead of recording for replication as before, I used the record as a way to question current reconstruction processes and to develop an alternative reconstruction vision, a more inclusive and sustainable method for reusing what is left from the earthquake instead of complete replacement. As a methodology, in 2013, almost 10 years ago now, I surveyed 3 heritage areas in Chile, San Lorenzo de Tarapacá, Zúñiga, and Lolol, affected by different earthquakes and in different stages of the reconstruction process, using terrestrial laser scanning, complemented by photography and interviews. This was an experiment to see how much data could be captured in a short period of 3 days, resembling a post-earthquake emergency situation. In this time, it was possible to capture each heritage area taken from its streets with some samples of interiors. An extra day was used for interviews. 3D laser scanning, also known as LiDAR, allows obtaining 3-dimensional colored point cloud with precision of millimeters. Data that can be usable for many purposes later, such as architectural and technical drawings, BIM models, etc. And this is Tarapacá, a model using 178 scans. The main opportunity offered by the technology is to have a metric basis for a whole heritage village in a short period that enables structural analysis, the creation of risk mitigation measures, and the development of interventions timely. Here, for example, the architectural drawings of a ruined house using 8 scans on site, taken in less than an hour, providing a safest surveying option. This is Lolol, and this is a plan obtained by sectioning the 3D point cloud. Here, the same plan showing the houses already repaired and others that were in progress of reparation. And this is Zúñiga in 2013 again, where most of its heritage area was captured in 3 days. From the public spaces mainly. Only a couple of interiors were captured at that time. I explored the limits of benefits of 3D laser scan technology in comparison with hand-measured methods used at the time, and other theoretical aspects about the role and implications of such accurate records for the intervention of heritage buildings, which I'm leaving out due to the time constraints of this presentation to focus more on the practical applications, such as this project, for example, this research project, where we applied this approach in India, funded by AHRC and DCMS. I've been lucky to lead the most amazing research team from 5 different institutions, each one providing different inputs to the project, but also replicated a network of stakeholders relevant in case of an earthquake, such as academia, governmental and heritage institutions, and local NGOs. Due to COVID restrictions, we were not able to travel for the data capture on site, so it was done by other project partners in India. They got the expertise on laser scanning through this parallel training project. During 5 days on site, our project partners engaged with the community of our case study Bela in Gujarat, affected by the 2001 earthquake. They tried to get as much data as possible, simulating a fictional post-earthquake scenario using 3D terrestrial laser scanning, photography, drone capture, and interviews. To exemplify the data obtained, this is the working plan of Bela, showing the streets captured and identifying the 18 buildings interiorly scanned, combining also line drawings from aerial photographs. This is from 2021, obtaining much more data than in Chile due to the technology advancing fast. And this serves to develop general damage assessment of the constructions and to inform risk preparedness. For example, this is a temple in Bela with damage identified, and the aerial drone photograph, which is a great complement to cover what the 3D laser scanning cannot capture. And from the 3D data, this section has been created, for example, revealing not only cracks and distortions, but major structural problems. We have used the data visualization to engage and involve the community in the process of carrying out this research, aware of ethical concerns. These are some publications done on the left and those almost ready on the right. Soon we will make available a policy brief aimed at authorities in India, explaining the methodology developed for Bela, and also a guidance document that covers the technical aspects of 3D laser scanning aimed at professionals and institutions working in disaster risk management. To conclude, as a post-earthquake documenting tool, 3D laser scanning provides rapid, user-safe, accurate, and potentially complete survey of damaged built heritage. Only if combined with other tools such as aerial drones and interviews, photogrammetry, as done in India. These tools inform a wider methodology of reconstruction as a sustainable strategy of mitigation and reuse to break the cycle of damage and rebuilding each time an earthquake occurs, with the potential to enhance recovery processes and possible implementation to other disasters. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm looking forward to your questions and comments.
Thank you very much, Bernadette. Through your presentation, you have very clearly explained the enormous potential of documentation using 3D laser scanning for sustainable post-disaster recovery. It's always good to look at practical examples and see how this can be done, and this definitely showed that very much. So thank you again. Now I have the pleasure of requesting Mr. Anthony Cons Anthony, who has been the technology manager for the Discovery program for the past 22 years and is responsible for the management of applied technology research, including project management, 3D data capture at various levels, GIS for cultural heritage, data set management and archiving, metadata promotion and dissemination of the use of technology within cultural heritage. Anthony's current research interests include the reuse and preservation of archaeology data and the use of multi-scale digital documentation techniques in cultural heritage. So over to you, Anthony, floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Rohit. Can you all see the screen okay?
Yes, if you can just turn on your slideshow, that would be fine.
Okay.
Yes, perfect.
Okay, thank you very much, and thanks very much for the invitation to speak here today. So my name's Anthony Coens. As explained there, I'm the technology manager at the Discovery Programme. We're an organisation based in Ireland. And at the core of what the Discovery Programme is, when we were established, it's looking at cross-disciplinary research within archaeology and cultural heritage and bringing together people from history, geography, engineering, biology, chemistry, ICT, archaeology, and the whole range of different domains which are out there, and bringing these people together, and then hopefully providing different ways and new ways of exploring archaeology and cultural heritage concepts and things. So some of this is going to be a replication of what Mario said before. So why do we carry out digital documentation? So primarily is to record the things we're trying to preserve. So these could be monuments or landscapes. Secondly, it's for the conservation. So to have informed decision making of these objects, we need to kind of understand what's happening to them. And by using 3D documentation, we can understand issues of decay and loss. The third issue is prospection. So this is where we can use 3D documentation methods to identify new things we can't see with the human eye or from a human perspective. This is especially good in landscape survey, and also within things like detailed drawings and things like rock art and megalithic art where you can't see with the naked eye. So fourthly, is for interpretation to help us understand things like building phasing, building construction, and the way tangible cultural heritage has been built or placed together, or how it works. And then the final two, visualization, how we can explore cultural heritage through the concepts of visual inspection and visual projection. And then also how we can reconstruct these spaces within the virtual space. So within the Discovery Programme, we kind of cover the full gamut or range of scale of objects within cultural heritage. So everything down from something that may be a couple of centimeters in terms of an artifact, working our way up through architectural fragments or carved stones and high crosses and Neolithic artwork, individual monuments such as Pool na Brón, the portal tomb there in the top right, and then things as large as shipwrecks, which is an example down in the bottom left, whole buildings, which is the Irish Parliament site, and the bottom images, all the way to using LiDAR data or airborne laser scanning across landscapes, the example here being Tara. So the methodologies we use within the Discovery Programme, here's a kind of example of the kit we have. We don't own a helicopter, but we've kind of used that within aerial laser scanning in the past. So everything from GNSS, total stations, terrestrial laser scanners, structured light, close range scanning, and photogrammetry. And it's the photogrammetry that's kind of in the past 5 years, we think, is kind of enhanced the way we work. So if you the ability to get a camera in a different position, either on a UAV or on an ROV underwater or on a camera pole or on a camera rail, if you're doing very small objects, it's the ability to have this sensor within these different kind of scale and spaces that has opened up a lot of ability to record things in really high resolution and the appropriate resolution. So when we're talking about which techniques we use, this depends on things such as the spatial resolution and scale input and the scale output of the data sets, the environment we're carrying out the survey. So can we get access to it? Is it a light or dark situation? What kind of weather conditions? The material characteristics of the object we're trying to record. Is it reflective? What kind of color? The use of the data. And then finally, looking at the cost. So the cost of both capture in terms of time, processing in terms of time, but then also the equipment and the hardware and software you need to carry out this. But it's all in with the aim of increasing the quality of the data we're producing. One of the things we've kind of felt over the past couple of years, which has been a great advantage, is the kind of the ability to fuse different data sources together. So we found, especially with terrestrial laser scanning and photogrammetry, where we're able to take terrestrial photogrammetry drone photogrammetry and terrestrial laser scan data, and kind of fuse these within the same model space and be able to produce really, really high resolution geometric models, but then also with a photo texture. So an example here is just of an abandoned Napoleonic fort, some of the officers' messes and officers' quarters. And the image on the right-hand side is just the actual base geometry of the model. And then as we go to the image on the left is the geometry, whereas the image on the left or right is the geometry with the photo texture. And again, this is the ability to kind of texture objects differently. So the image on the right, there is a high cross, but what we've done here, instead of just draping over the photo texture, we've actually got routines now using gaming technology and physical-based rendering methods. We can actually accentuate and produce a hyperreal surface model that kind of allows you to kind of understand the level of degradation that's taking place, but also understand and record the kind of detailed dressing of the stonework. So some examples where we've been using digital documentation is to understand the effects of change and monitoring change. So as part of a project called Cherish, we've been looking at the effects of climate change on some sites. So this could be using such as point cloud, looking at point clouds from terrestrial laser scan or close range scans over different time periods. So example here is on Skellig Michael Walls, on a market cross in Ireland, on a shipwreck on the SSS the Manchester Merchant. And then also looking at comparing the digital terrain models and digital elevation models produced through UAV surveys, taken at different time scales and looking at the erosion effects on the coastline and also accretion effects on the coastline of monument decay. And here's just a quick example of Doonbeg Hill Fort in 2017 and 2018, where after catastrophic collapse, about 3,000 tons worth of the monument fell into the sea. And it's through these digital documentation methods we can actually quantify and see how this change is taking effect, but also record the loss that's taken place. Other examples include use of point cloud data and terrestrial laser scan data and production of HBIM models. So this is a project looking at the Irish Parliament site done in conjunction with Mario's institution, SIMS in Carleton University, for their students. And then using close range recording for capitals on some of the Georgian buildings in Ireland. So we've recorded damage on them. And then using 3D modeling and 3D CAD-CAM and construction methods, producing new versions based on the older versions. And then finally, using 3D data to kind of promote and explore heritage with the public and promote these sites. So taking what was originally a conservation survey and then turning these into exhibition spaces or virtual reality models and walkthroughs to allow people to explore cultural heritage spaces which they can't get access to. So many thanks, and that's what I've showed here is a kind of a collection from the whole Discovery Programme team and collaborators. And there's our Sketchfab website if you want to go and have a look at some of our models. And finally, just a quick promotion. We've got a position opening as a job within the Discovery Programme for a new surveyor. So if you're interested in some of the things you've seen, please have a look at our website and apply. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anthony. Through your presentation, you have clearly showed how digital data documented in 3 dimensions can be effective as a means of monitoring HBIM and also for conservation treatment. So by actually accurately being able to document the condition of the object regardless of its scale. The 3D models recorded by you are shared on Sketchfab, where you can easily view the extreme and view it in an extremely accurate and beautiful way. So I think there are all these advantages that you have showcased, which have been very useful for us to learn about. So thank you again, Anthony, for your presentation.
Thank you.
And now I am pleased to request Mr. Atsushi Noguchi, researcher at Kanazawa University in Japan. He is an archaeologist and digital documentation expert on cultural heritage and has experience of undertaking fieldwork in archaeological sites in Japan, South Central West Asia, as well as has done cultural heritage documentation project in Pakistan and Honduras. His recent focus is applying generic and low-cost technology for cultural heritage documentation to involve non-professional community members for sustainable cultural heritage conservation. I now turn the floor to Mr. Noguchi for his presentation.
Okay, so thank you for introducing me. My name is Atsushi Noguchi from Japan. So can you hear me? And so can you see my
Yes, we can hear
presentation?
you. We can see your screen as well.
Okay, okay, thank you very much. So, so at first, I really appreciate both Rohit and Hirofumi to invite me this great webinar. So here I will present on capturing cultural heritage 3D with everyone, challenges on community-based digital documentation in Japan. So I'm not sure I can tell everything within 7 minutes, but I make my effort. So this is outline of my presentations. And so I'm Atsushi Noguchi from Kanazawa University. And so recently, currently, I'm working both in South Asia and Central America for capacity building and technology transferring for sustainable cultural heritage management. So actually, this project in Honduras is funded by the Agency of Cultural Affairs Japan. So my aim on community-based approach is set on affordable and sustainable project management with cost-benefit evaluation of cost-benefit performance. And so our goal is aimed on awareness and creating feeling of relevance among people. So about affordability and cost-benefit performance, so of course, we can employ various technology and devices from satellite imagery to terrestrial LiDAR or 3D photogrammetry. And so each technology and devices have different advantages. So we usually use this in combination for different purposes. So for instance, in Honduras, we employ different multi-scale 3D scanning from UAV LiDAR aerial scanning to terrestrial LiDAR scanning. And also we employ some mobile LiDAR scan installed on iPhone, Apple iPhone or iPad, like this. So our issue is how covers a lot of heritage behind the focal target. So there are so many heritages which we should document. But so usually a public sector or academic sector employ experts and specialized equipment for mainly on focal target, but resources are limited. So, but we never remained list of heritage. So we should call people to support our work. And in this regard, digital technology gives power to the people for supporting their skill, providing sense of accomplishment. Then they can develop interest, awareness, and fondness to cultural heritage. So this is the case which we support in Hida City, Central Japan, for involving people and developing local community. So problem is there is a local museum at remote area, but they have actually a few resources for sustainable operations. So most problem is population of local community is very small. So we need to call people out of community. Then we organize a documentation workshop together with experts and amateurs together. And this develops awareness and relevant feelings to cultural heritage and of course the area. And so outcome of our project is very clear, increase of visitors and donation to community and the museum. So we define this as a development of relevant population rather than a migrated population into this area. And so we also aim on opening the museum. So there are a lot of cultural heritage in backyard, but no opportunity for people to be aware these plenty of collections. So documentation work establishes open access archives by the people for the people. So we publish our results on Sketchfab as well. So sorry, we didn't prepare English description, so that this is our future task. But so this brings collection out of storage for providing opportunity of awareness and experience among people. And this so with this digitalized cultural heritage, we can provide more experiences in classroom of primary and junior high school. And of course, we can introduce our digitalized cultural heritage into metaverse. So just yesterday, we launched our new 3D DB viewer cultural heritage digital twin project. And also we organize open workshop, so-called MinCap or Capturing 3D with Everyone project. So people enjoy 3D capture on solid, publish their data on 3D WebGIS. So this is one example from last year's workshop. So one participant captures many monuments and scenery on the street. And so he publishes his result on 3D WebGIS. So people can enjoy this in metaverse. So our perspectives are like this. So Japanese are now living in very aging society. So sustainability of local community faces actual crisis. So when local community can't survive, how we can sustain cultural heritage in this area? So involving people to cultural heritage management is critical for these issues. So of course, this is not only for holding labor forces, but so when we as experts shares our work with local people, so local people can develop awareness and feeling of relevance. So digital devices, especially consumer products, support people's skill. Technology contributes sustainable cultural heritage management with everyone. So we should hand over this to next generation. So we will continue our work together with the local community. So I hope I can show more in future. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Noguchi-san. Your presentation provided an excellent example of community revitalization using 3D documentation. Rural areas suffering from population decline are also a problem in other parts of the world, such as in Europe. And I think it's a wonderful project to explore new forms of museums while involving community residents by utilizing these new tools that can be handled by everyone. So thank you very much once again for your excellent presentation. And now I'm requesting Mr. Manuel Duenas, lecturer in the Department of Anthropology and Heritage Studies in UC Merced, University of California. He's an archaeologist whose work has focused on West Mexico and is the director of an archaeological project in the Mexican state of Aguascalientes. His studies focuses on long-distance trade, world systems theory, and household archaeology. As a heritage scholar, he has participated in digital historic preservation initiatives and digital archaeology research and museum studies in Mexico's heritage archaeological sites, creating virtual experiences for public exhibitions. So I'm now inviting Mr. Manuel to kindly share his presentation.
Thank you so much for having me. And hello, everyone. Please tell me if you can hear me and see me.
Yes, it's perfect.
Excellent. So again, hello, everyone. I'm going to talk about Xochicalco virtual tour project, focusing on the 3D documentation and creation of digital assets for a walking simulation experience or a virtual visit. Xochicalco is a UNESCO World Heritage pre-Columbian archaeological site in the Miacatlan municipality in the western part of Morelos. The site is located 38 kilometers southwest of Cuernavaca, which is the capital of the state, and about 127 kilometers south by the road from Mexico City. The virtualization of Xochicalco's meaningful dissemination is a project created by the ENCRIM, the Mexican National School of Conservation, Restoration, and Museography, with a collaboration of the University of California, Merced. This collaboration is focused on the creation of virtual assets and user experience design, but the partnerships go beyond the application because we want to get into public studies. The project seeks to create a virtual visit to give remote access to the new site's museography to the general Mexican public, but also an international public. So the methods for the creation of these virtual assets, the 3D documented Xochicalco's build space, the project used a combination of drone photogrammetry, ground photogrammetry, and terrestrial laser scans. So the 3D modeling process was conducted mostly in Agisoft Metashape, but to combine photos and laser scans, the project relied on reality capture. So the flight process and the ground control points, well, basically in the span of 3 days, we used a DJI Mavic 2 and took ground control points with a precision GPS, and the photos were a lot of photos. The total amount of photographs and laser scans, what we name hotspots, namely each one of individual buildings, we accumulated a total of closely 4,000 photos. But also we created a general flight to have the general environment of the whole site in 2,600 photos, and for a total of 6,000 drone photos plus 8,000 photos at the ground level for the details, for a total of 15,000 photos. And additionally, of course, we had 3 laser scans, but for specific buildings only, the observatory, the Feather Serpent Pyramid, and the Stellite Temple. So, for example, in the case of this space, which is called the Palace, we use more than 2,000 photos, combining aerial, drone, and ground photos that allows us to have maximum detail. So you can see a little bit of the number of the faces and the number of points. And we're using depth maps to create the 3D models mostly. So we're skipping the cloud points part. And this is how you can see in reality capture the Feather Serpent, combining the laser scans and the ground photos alignment. Particularly, the photos were helpful to texture the solid side. I mean, we have high quality with laser scanners, but now with the textures, we can have these photorealistic models. Also, the Metashape results, for example, this is a hotspot, and here you can see the accuracy of the resulting model, the resolution of the 3D model, and also the occlusion maps that explain and shows a little bit of the resolution. But of course, in Metashape, you're allowed to decimate the meshes and adding high-resolution normal maps and occlusion maps, so we can export, and they can export the models and import the models in other 3D environments that uses PBR materials that can be rendered, allowing us to have, again, a more optimized experience. This is one of the examples. Some of the results. This is again the palace. Again, the palace already textured. And The model was integrated into one single scene. All the models were positioned together, clean, and exported in FBX format, again using Blender. The development environment for the walking simulator that we chose was Unity. So for the first person view exploration of Xochicalco, we designed a workflow that involves the user moving along 3 possible routes, one short, one medium, and one long, exploring the information signs located in their actual position as they are in the real life, with the possibility to click on them, expand the information with more images or videos, or even explore 3-dimensional reconstructions of these sites as they were used in the pre-Hispanic times. The user interface, basically, when you run the application, the menu allows you to choose the preferred route depending on your availability of time. Once that you have chosen your path, you will jump in the 3D environment so you can walk the site and interact with the information signs, as you can see over here. So the information signs, this will pop up when you select the signs in the 3D environment. So they have voiceover that currently we have them in 2 languages, in Spanish and English, but plans are considering including Nahuatl, other native languages of the region, as well as sign language. Finally, we want to disseminate this 3D environment, we're considering to export this experience to different operative systems, particularly for the trials and the beta testing, but the ideal option would be to put this in the web so we can share it with most of the public. In the short term, we are still beta testing with the focus groups of young students from 12 to 15 years approximately, and university students from 18 to 22 years approximately from the nearby towns of the site. Also, local institutions and the INCRIM school is providing help with the educational part of the project. So that is my take on these things. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel, for your presentation. You clearly showed how 3D documented archaeological sites are incorporated into a game engine to create an unprecedented and entertaining experience for a cultural heritage site in a virtual space. We can't wait for the day when everyone will be able to experience this interactive kind of entertainment and also knowledge while visiting these sites virtually. So thank you very much, Emmanuel, for your excellent presentation. Now I request Mr. Bijan Rohani, Senior Researcher and Project Manager of the Endangered Archaeology in the Middle East and North Africa Emerge Project at the University of Oxford. His research and professional interests include management and conservation of built heritage, assessing and recording risk and damage from natural and human-induced disasters, climate change and armed conflict to archaeological sites, developing risk preparedness and management plans and methodologies for endangered cultural heritage sites, and the application of digital technologies in cultural heritage. He's also the Vice President of ICOMOS Risk Preparedness Committee, ICOR, and Cultural Emergency Fund CER Board Member. So I now invite Bijan to make his presentation.
Thank you very much, Rohit, and hello, everyone. In my short talk today, I will reflect on some ethical questions regarding digital technology and cultural heritage. The concept of cultural heritage has evolved since the last century. Today, we understand cultural heritage as a process and a dynamic discourse rather than just a product from the past. Our understanding of heritage today does not reduce it to a list of objects and sites that must be preserved. The social and cultural process of heritage and understanding its meanings and values is also considered part of the heritage. We are now aware of cultural heritage in its context and landscape within which past and present people are culturally engaged. The increasing use of digital technology has also changed our understanding of and relationship with cultural heritage. Research, interpretation, protection, management, and education are just some aspects in which digital technologies are helping professionals and scholars to better understand and protect heritage and communicate with a broader community. However, the attention to ethical questions related to this technology is still in its embryonic stages. The question is, to what extent is digital technology faithful to our understanding of cultural heritage as a process? Will digital and 3D technology lead to the digital objectification and tokenization of cultural heritage and separate it from its context as if it were floating in an ethereal space? Is there a risk that 3D models and immersive digital environments would lead to reductionist approaches to cultural heritage in which the context, including the community surrounding the heritage, would be removed? In the EAMINA project, we raised some ethical questions regarding remote sensing and cultural heritage, and we proposed a humanitarian framework for it. Santana et al., as explained by Mario in his talk, also proposed 6 ethical categories for heritage recording related to different aspects, including conduct, best practices, cultural heritage, the public and communities, heritage recording specialists, and qualifications. But ethical challenges go beyond these. The crucial question that needs to be addressed is the fundamental changing relationship between people and their cultural heritage and the transformation of the concept of heritage due to the new technologies. One important aspect of digital ethics relates to the old question of who owns the past. As technology becomes more accessible, the right to access cultural heritage and the right to produce 3D models and replicas and benefit from them becomes more complex. The issue becomes more sensitive when we face 3D replicas of contested or even intentionally destroyed heritage and present them out of their context. A combination of pocket digital technology, contested heritage, and the right to access and freedom of information can lead to complicated ethical issues. The ongoing case between the Institute of Digital Archaeology, or IDA, and the British Museum over the disputed Parthenon marbles highlights this potential. Earlier this year, the request of IDA to scan the pieces of Parthenon marbles held at the British Museum was rejected by the museum. But the IDA team decided to use an iPad fitted with highly sophisticated LiDAR sensors to scan the marbles anyway without informing the museum. IDA said the scans would be used by a carving robot at a workshop in Carrara, Italy, to create precise and life-size replicas of the marbles. According to IDA, the replicas could substitute the marbles inside the British Museum in order for the originals to return to Greece. In an official statement, the British Museum said the museum was deeply concerned to hear suggestions that unauthorized scanning took place in their galleries. But is digital technology able to transcend cultural and political boundaries to resolve these types of disputes over the restitution of cultural heritage? To apply digital technology in complex contexts, such as the ownership of contested cultural heritage, we should know who requested their replications and whom such replicas will serve. Furthermore, who will benefit from them. The introduction of NFTs, or non-fungible tokens, and cryptocurrencies into the art and heritage market further complicate ethical considerations for 3D replicas. This is still an unregulated field, which raises ethical questions about who controls digital replicas. Other difficult questions are about NFT of contested heritage or even looted antiquities. In conclusion, entering the digital heritage era and capitalizing on its capabilities should be together with considering new and evolving risks and developing ethical frameworks to address them. We should also consider the changing relationship between digital heritage and material evidence, and more than that, fidelity to the truth in the context where heritage is located. Although the speed of the development of digital technology is very high, The digital divide may also grow at the same speed between the global North and global South societies. If these digital tools are not designed to be used by low-tech communities with insufficient resources and low connectivity, the digital divide will lead to digital colonialism. In this way, limited groups with digital capital and capabilities will monopolize access to and recreation, representation, and reinterpretation and economic benefits of digital heritage. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bijan. I think you have rightfully highlighted the need for a broader discussion to address the issue of digital divide. You spoke about the need for an ethical framework to take into account the changing relationship with cultural heritage due to the availability of these digital technologies, linking to specific issues that you highlighted, such as replicas and NFTs. So these are very important things that we have to really take into account while we use these new digital technologies that are available to us today. So thank you very much for your presentation, Bijan. And last but not the least, I request Mr. Rand Epik, conservation architect. Rand Epik is a practicing professional and has always believed in the protection and improvement of built historic environment because of its impact on the quality of life of the people and the way it shapes identities. So he has worked for 30 years to protect unique places through exemplary projects, management plans, physical conservation interventions, and various educational efforts. So he has also lectured in various institutions, and he has also worked with ICCROM for many years, starting from 2003, coordinating many international courses, including the course that he's now also teaching at in Mosul, which I think is the basis for his presentation as well. So I now invite Rand to make his presentation. Over to you, Rand.
Thank you, Rohit, and thank you, Eero, for the invitation to speak and the other speakers. Let me share the screen here. And here we go. Can you see it okay?
Yes, it's very perfect.
Okay, all right. Well, thanks again. And thanks also to George and Ayman and everyone working on the Mosul project. The ICCROM Heritage Recovery Program in Mosul is a project to strengthen the skills of local heritage professionals and craftspeople through training and hands-on technical practice. It's under the UNESCO umbrella, Revive the Spirit of Mosul, following the destruction in that important city. It's funded by the UAE and the EU with the goal of fostering community reconciliation and the rehabilitation of the city's cultural heritage sites. It's a 2-year program with 2 tracks, one in professional development and one in building crafts revival. The professional track is divided into 7 modules, one of which is documentation. Here we go. Now, this webinar is on applied digital documentation and 3D technologies, but the second part of the title of this presentation is on sustainable heritage preservation and management. And I think for conservation or documentation to be sustainable, we have to start with people. Laser scanners, expensive technology, I mean, they're not needed for understanding heritage. Listening, interacting, and discussing with people is what is needed to understand heritage and ensure that our efforts are sustainable. Here, the participants in Mosul, a dynamic group, I wish I could mention all of them. Here they're interviewing Father Olivier in the prayer house next to the cathedral in Mosul. And I think we learned more in 15 minutes than through 2 or 3 days of survey. Here they are interviewing a nun who used to live and work there. And this is, I think, is true 3D documentation relating to the life of the place. We happened to be there when an orphan who was 5 years old lived in this prayer house some 40 years ago. And he related to us how this place changed his life. And this gave a much deeper respect and admiration for the place and its goal, and helped us inform what the place could be in the future following a conservation intervention. We also must not forget about the 4th dimension, and that dimension of time. And it's important that we understand our role in this continuum of time, and that these places had a richness many, many years ago, and we have to remember that. Here, the participants discovered a number of historic photographs from the neighborhood. And here, I'd like to mention two-dimensional documentation is very important. Observing, thinking, and sketching are critical tools, even before advanced technology or techniques. And this makes the work of later, more advanced tools and technologies more efficient and effective. We know where to point the technologies. Here's some examples of the work that I was quite proud of, that we spent 2 or 3 days really studying the place and observing without relying on cameras or laser scanners or photogrammetry. And I was astounded by the amount of information they collected just through this method. Our strategy in this training program was to start by talking with people, investigating and connecting with the values of the place, observing the site, sketching, scoping, looking at the conditions. We treated the participants as professionals, and they had responsibility. And we focused on an actual building project with defined deliverables and deadlines and presentations. We acted as the client. We used hands-on practical exercises with in-field lectures and more work in the field than lectures. We turned it around. We had lectures in the field rather than having lectures in the classroom. Of course, we supplemented this with traditional lectures and lab work. We used a variety of tools based on the conservation problems we observed in the field. And participants were given the freedom to attempt the documentation, look at the results, evaluate, and repeat. And through this process, they were able to really develop a very professional level of deliverable. We focused on team building and sharing information, and we often co-opted the participants as assistant instructors. At one point, I didn't know how to make an animation in the project or in the program, but one of the participants, quite clever with computers, figured it out. So I had him go around to all of the different groups and teach them to do it. And we really leveraged ourselves up in this way in a short amount of time. And the documentation module, one of the 7 modules, was not standalone. This was important so the participants could see the larger picture of implementation. We really tried hard to connect it with the values module, with the implementation module, with the structural assessment module. Here's a team on site, getting to know them and using some of the 3-dimensional documentation tools and technologies. Of course, we used a lot of other tools. We used temperature guns to look at the moisture meters, crack monitors, plumb bobs, drones, laser scanners, etc. Here's some images of the work on site. And I think it was quite effective because we were working on site with laptops provided by ICCROM, and we could immediately get feedback from their results. These 2D, 3D, and 4D tools really allowed a multi-dimensional understanding of the building. This was evident in the multiple presentations we asked them to do. Of course, we also produced 3-dimensional models. Now, I have to stress, this is a 3-dimensional model of the prayer house, which was our focus. And this model was entirely produced by the participants in 2 weeks. It was not only the exterior, but also some areas of the context, the surrounding streets, but also the interiors, complete interiors. And I was quite proud that they were able to go from sketching on the first day to building a 3D model at the end of 2 weeks. This was really a satisfying result. Here's some more images of their work. Of course, this includes cutting sections through the model, interiors, finishes, but we did not stop at the 3-dimensional model. we continued on, and this is a place where I really feel that the three-dimensional documentation falls apart, in that we added all of this information back into the two-dimensional space. Because in the end, to design a conservation intervention, you have to communicate with the consultant, with the contractor, and with the client. And they're going to look at paper. They're not going to look at the three-dimensional model. So we were able to take this three-dimensional model and take it to the next step, which was implementation, cutting the model, making a proper floor plan in 2 dimensions in AutoCAD, a simple program they all knew, and adding more information about not only about the conditions they observed in photographs and text, but also what needed to happen, getting them to think to the next step about the conservation intervention. And now these drawings are not mine. They were produced by the participant teams, and it was nice to see the inspiration between the teams. One team developed this nice axonometric section to describe some of the details, and it was quickly copied by many of the other teams. So it was nice to see the cooperation, but also competition between the teams. And this is really taking it to the next level, beyond 3D documentation, because the goal was conservation and working with these teams, creating instructions for the eventual implementation. And I'm happy to report that this project will go into implementation. Some of the ideas and documentation that was generated by the participants in this ICCROM course will be shared with UNESCO. They have been shared with UNESCO, and the project will undergo works. So this is a good result. Okay, in conclusion, I mean, 3-dimensional digital documentation is absolutely required. It's our 21st century standard, but it does not replace talking, observing, and thinking, and sketching, and archival research. It does not replace these things. I think too often it's easy to point technology at a historic building and expect the technology or the tool to collect your data for you. It's augmenting a documentation process that is hundreds of years old. More data must be added to this 3-dimensional model, and the work has to be connected to the values, attributes, and significance. And I think that the 3-dimensional digital model, it's not the product, and this is where we often stop. It's the product, and it's nice to look at, but it really isn't the product. It's the base that more information and knowledge must be added to. And the final thought is that these tools are really becoming much more accessible and approachable. And I'm quite proud of the 22 participants in that they were able to go from knowing nothing about 3-dimensional documentation to producing a full 3-dimensional model, interior and exterior, within 2 weeks. I even surprised myself that they were able to do this. And I appreciate that Bijan talked about the digital divide, but so I think these ICCROM courses are really essential in closing that divide. Thank you very much, and that's the presentation.
Thank you very much, Rand. You shared some very profound insights that you have gained from this teaching this cultural heritage documentation around the world, but especially with your recent experience in Mosul. And we should not, but you also pointed out that we cannot rely on 3D technology or this digital technology alone. It has to be combined with other tools, and other methods, which is very important for us to keep in mind. You also shared this importance of adding information about value of cultural heritage that has to be obtained through observation, by sketching, and through dialogue with people, and which is very important as well. So thank you very much for highlighting that aspect as well.
Sure, and this is the model that they produced.
Right, exactly. So you can have a look at the model produced by the students of this course in Mosul. So let me thank once again all the panelists for their stimulating presentations. And before we take up questions from the audience, I would now like to request my colleague Hirofumi to ask some questions to the panelists, and so they can respond to the questions, please. So Hirofumi, over to you. You need to unmute, Hirofumi.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Rohito. So we will share some questions for for the resource persons. The first question is, how can we apply documentation in various social cultural aspect? I would like to ask this question to Mr. Bijan.
Yes, thank you. So as I was trying to say that today we consider heritage in its context. So also Rand was explaining that it's about knowledge. It's not just about documenting a site, monument, or object. We need to consider the social and cultural context in which the cultural heritage, being a site, monument, or object, is located. We need to also somehow document and show that knowledge that is embedded in heritage. Technology can help us to better understand or to better document and to better know cultural heritage, but that's not where we should stop. Paying attention to the cultural, political, social, and economic context of heritage should not be forgotten because of digital technology, or because we are in love with digital technology. So we should acknowledge the evolution of the concept of heritage that we have seen since the 19th century, or since the evolution of the concept that we now have cultural landscape, we have intangible aspect of heritage. We have these new concepts of heritage. When using digital technology, we should be very careful that it's not leading us to a reductionist approach to heritage. It's important, again, I say, it's important to consider cultural, social, economic, political context of where heritage is located.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bijan. I would like the same question to Mr. Noguchi. Can you answer the question, how can we apply documentation various social cultural aspect?
Yes, so in my approach, a community-based approach, so it is a good opportunity to touch with cultural heritage. So I think cultural heritage is so long isolated from people, citizens. So we often treat this as something special. So we should protect, we should preserve this from, for instance, a disaster or some vandalism or something. But so because of such long isolation, so people lose opportunity to be aware. So documenting cultural heritage is very good, can be very good opportunity to recover relationship between cultural heritage and people. So our project in Hida City, Japan, is mainly organized and operated by locals other than outsiders. So in this regard, we never face so many problems between different actors or stakeholders. But so, now I think we should consider more carefully about such aspects. So this is what I learned from this webinar. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Noguchi. So I would like to move to the next question. The next question I would ask Mr. Manuel and Mr. Anthony. How can we update documentation methods considering cutting-edge technology? At first, Mr. Manuel, please.
Okay, I can go. Updating the, I mean, we have seen the tools to create all these 3D 3D assets, 3D methodologies and everything has become more cheaper, more accessible. Now, as one of my fellow panelists was showing, you can do that now with even your cell phone. So the question would be, and still is, how to share the 3D models better, right? For academists and for people that is expert on cultural heritage and cultural resource management, it seems like it's obvious to have these amazing 3D environment programs to visualize the data and to have these navigate through the model and everything. Sketchfab is absolutely trying to do that, but absolutely, and that is from my point of view, these digital environments that are combining all of these objects and actually combining the rest of the data that we're gathering on the field, right? The vegetation, the skyline, the rest of the topography, and that kind of thing. It seems to be a more intuitive way to navigate these things and to explore them. Again, from the phenomenological point of view, having an bodily experience inside of these environments and looking at the objects, exploring them as you will naturally do it, like not only spinning the buildings and that kind of thing, but actually you moving around them and actually seeing how they interact with the world. I think that it's gonna be a more efficient way to communicate. So I think that in that line, there's still a little bit of more progress to be made. Otherwise, the technologies to have 3D assets have become cheaper and more accessible, and maybe combining more sources of data would be better.
Thank you very much. So I would ask also the Mr. Anthony, can you answer this question?
Yeah, so I suppose one thing would be to try and look outside your own discipline and see what the people are doing, because probably somebody else has thought of it before you have, but it's just about how you combine some of the different methodologies in different domains, like in gaming or in engineering, and how you apply that within cultural heritage. And then I suppose the other thing is the methodologies we're all using. So we're developing all these different pipelines to get from object capture to delivery of this data. And the delivery of data can be in all different methods, from games to ortho imagery to 3D models for printing. But it's how we document this kind of process and pipeline, and how we share that process and pipeline and methodologies between each other. I think we should probably, as a community, be more open about, standardizing some of these methods and making sure we get as many people, using them and developing techniques based on the efforts we put in. So I suppose it's things like, producing things like paradata and metadata about our methodologies. And I think what Manuel said there's about, opening up the data sets for people to reuse, in different ways. We found with some of our data, there's ways we never even thought about you could use them, and other people have taken them on. So if people producing artworks or even things like chocolates, from the 3D models, you need to just explore kind of how cultural heritage content can be valuable in different ways.
Yeah, thank you very much. So now I'll have the last question. This question I would ask Mr. Rand and Dr. Bernadette. The question is, how can we make documentation economically affordable? The first, Dr. Bernadette, can you answer this question? Hello, Bernadette.
Hi,
Okay.
that is through. Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, I can hear you.
Okay. I was saying that I think the best that Rand will probably agree with me that one of the best approaches to make it affordable is training. At least it has worked in my case, because, for example, in the project in India, we did a project, only a training project, and one of our problems was COVID, that we couldn't travel with equipment. So we sent the equipment, we did all the training remotely. They got into how to do it by themselves. They could do it. We could also, potentially you could say, oh, we can ask a consultancy to get the data for us. That would have cost a lot of money, but that was not the issue. The idea was to get the people there to know the technology and to transfer the technology to the new generations of conservation architects.
Yeah.
So I think that's a way of making it more affordable to train these new generations into many different tools, and then it will become more affordable in that way.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, Mr. Rand?
I think by its nature, it's becoming more affordable. And this is really good because we're, leveraging off other industries like the gaming industry or the survey industry. So I think by its nature, it's becoming more affordable. But as I said, I think a lot of the documentation, you don't need expensive technology to understand the place and design conservation measures. I guess that's my answer.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So Rohito, I would like to back to you.
Okay, so thank you very much for these responses. Now we have received many interesting questions and comments, but due to limited time, of course, it won't be possible for us to take all of these. But I'll pose some of the questions to the panelists. These are all general questions, so maybe I'll direct them to some. But before that, I see Mario has raised his hand. Mario, would you like to say something?
Yes, no, thank you, Rohit. I was asked, the question about training and capacity and bridging the gap, of making technologies more affordable. I think there is something that we are missing. And I feel very strongly about this being, working many capacity building projects around the world. And probably Rand can talk about this too, because we were involved together in some of them. Is that capacity building is one thing, but another thing is strengthening the heritage institutions' capacity to do the work. Because, we can give millions of training courses to train people, but if the institution that employs these people are not strong, then these people leave. And this has been a recurrent thing that happens a lot. So, I mean, as Rand said, digital technologies are only used in a partial specific area of the conservation process. And if we don't have, if they cannot afford to use them, we can give a lot of training, but it won't go anywhere, right? So I think that I just wanted to point that out, but thank you so much for giving me.
Thank you very much, Mario. So there's a question about the problem of saving the data in cloud points. Because of the huge size of it and the future accessibility of that. So maybe, yes. So maybe I will direct this question to Bernadette if you would like to respond.
Oh, that's a very good question. Well, actually, yeah, I think at the moment you can only the raw data is very difficult to be put in cloud or online data storage. I mean, you could, but it takes very long time and it's very difficult to work in that way. But it's possible. Obviously, we do it as a process of archiving all this data. So it's all online because it's more secure. But for the general access to this data, obviously you have to create the product. So this is what we have: Sketchfab. So you have the models in a more easy resolution or like less, simplified version, so it can be more accessible. I'm not sure if I am answering the question correctly.
No, but thank you so much. If anyone else would like to add to this, yes, Rand, please.
Okay, I was joking when I said printed, but not entirely. I think parts of it have to be printed. At least the composite has to be printed. I'll tell you how we store data. We do store a lot of it in the cloud, but I personally use two different cloud sources. It's stored on local drives, and then it's also stored on a drive that's taken off site weekly.
Okay. Well, yeah, so the next question is about the use of common software to combine. So is there a common software that can combine data from different data capture techniques? So if somebody can kind of respond on that kind of challenge. Anyone else?
For conservation purposes, it would be AutoCAD, something as simple as AutoCAD.
Well, maybe Anthony, would you like to respond to this?
Yeah, no, I think Manuel touched on it as well. We've moved over to reality capture now because the ability to fuse laser scan, photogrammetry, UAV data all within the same space is amazing. So you can control the level of detail you record because you can just capture higher and higher resolution imagery and base that around the quality of a laser scan framework.
Thank you very much, Anthony. So there's this other question about the permission of digital documentation or images to be used in the public domain. So how does this whole question of more public access, I think it's also something with Bijan, you were speaking in terms of the ethics. Maybe you would like to respond to this a little bit, this challenge.
Yeah, so sorry, can you repeat the question? The question is how to...
Yeah, I mean, it's about the permission of digital documentation to be made available for larger public use, you know, so from being just restricted to some people who have the access.
No FTs.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the question, I mean, itself refers to copyright issue and intellectual property. But what, for example, some projects or some people are, I mean, many of us in the field advocate for is open access and fair principles of, you know, access to data. So we hope to see more open access digital heritage projects. We know that it is not the case, but we believe that because cultural heritage belongs to people, and if you have the right to access to heritage, to extract data and turn it into digital asset, so it's good for the benefit of everyone that the data set or digital asset is also open access. So we strongly advocate for open access digital heritage. But in some cases, when there are for example, you know, companies are involved or copyrights is involved. So I know that it is difficult, but at least we can do our best to advocate for fair principle and open access to digital assets.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to respond to this question, which is quite critical, I feel. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to mention that I think that goes to the digital divide that Bijan was mentioning, and it's a very important point. We do have an understanding on the results and the products of what you obtain from the site, but when you go to the site, people will see you capturing data and they don't imagine what you will get. So I think at least what we did, for example, in India, was to kind of create this sort of leaflet for them, for them to say, look, this is the type of data we will get with images of previous projects. And so people can start understanding how they will see their houses and their heritage in the websites, you know, and in something else, because otherwise it's very, very difficult for them to connect. It's a new technology, there are new things. So kind of that process of engagement was really important and was done by our project partners there.
Mario, you want to say something to this?
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Yes, no, I completely agree with Bijan and Bernie, but I was thinking about the question about the storage. I'm sorry to jump into that before, but we're using this system called Dataverse, which is provided by the libraries of Ontario, the universities of Ontario, and that's where we store our data and our raw data and so on. And that will be, I mean, it will be stored digitally for many, many decades. Okay, so I think that this is the kind of things that probably we need to look into. But another issue is the formats. Okay, because the formats of these digital assets sometimes cannot be read if you don't have the adequate software. So I don't think that we have overcome those issues, but we are in transition to do so. And something also about the open source, you know, softwares. It's incredible the kind of information that is being produced, you know, like the open, is it Open Maps, Bijan, I don't remember the name. You know, this is a system that is completely available for free, and many companies, actually commercial companies such as Apple, are using. So we see that there is a lot of tools that are coming into a stage and are playing a big role. As we see the big corporations using digital assets also coming into the cloud services, in which you need to be engaged for years paying subscriptions, right? So yeah. I guess that probably Ran, who has an MBA, could help us a little bit to calculate all this. Anyway, that was all for me.
Thank you very much, Mario. Anthony, please.
Yeah, it was just on the issue of, you know, opening up data. So it's kind of how you balance the organizational, institutional control or teaching them to let go of control over some of these digital objects. So they still have to control the original object, but it's about teaching them the potential in these digital objects. But then it's also teaching people how, what's an appropriate use of the content as well. So when you make data completely freely open, it can be abused at the same time. So there's a way you can balance between, openness and fairness for free use and non-commercial use, but then maybe kind of license data for, if other people are going to make money off it, but try and plow that money back into capturing more data. So you get kind of this virtuous circle of licensing and more data capture.
Right. So there's this question, is there any survey or academic research about the way tourism industry perceives or reacts to ICT access, virtually to cultural heritage? So are ICT an incentive to visit cultural heritage sites in real, or are ICT considered as an obstacle to travel, to meet others and so on and so forth? So anybody would like to respond to this question more with regards to whether ICT can support or whether it's an obstacle to tourism? Anyone would like to talk about it? Maybe Manuel, if you would like to say something.
Yes, right, because our project is actually give more people access to it, with free access to it. No, access to archaeological sites. It's already complicated. I mean, Xochicalco, it's a UNESCO site, so it has a lot of infrastructure for people to go there, to the site, to actually go there. Nevertheless, it's complicated. I mean, it's built over a mountain, and some people go over there, and it's so extended that not everybody sees everything. So, for example, not that many people that went over there were aware that there is an actual observatory over there, and there was people complaining that how are they not notified at the beginning of the tour that there was an actual observatory that they could visit. So in this case, the digital representations can actually make maybe the site, the general site, more understandable, and actually potentially enhance the actual visit to the site. Now that you know all the spaces and everything that you can look around over there. Additionally, all of this information, the 3D things and the 3D assets that we're producing, we're 3D printing them and putting them in the museum too, so people can have a different way to interact with these products. So going back to the printing, and not only printing in 2D, but we can also actually print in 3D nowadays. So having a storage of these 3D assets too, and make them accessible to the public also through the museum or other exhibitions, it's important. So I don't see that this will become a problem, particularly for the actual site, but definitely this digital divide that people is talking, all of these enhanced data, metadata, or the rest of the stuff that is accompanying these 3D models, absolutely, it's gonna be, it's a challenge to put this information in the actual site and actually accessible to the people to different use it, right?
Right. Thank you very much, Manuel. Yes, Noguchi-san, please go ahead.
Yes, so this is just evidence without any analytical assessment. But also, actually, a number of visitors increased after we published 3D heritage models on Sketchfab. So I believe that increase of information distribution affects the decision making of potential tourists or visitors. So without any published information, they cannot discover, they cannot decide where they to go. So I think this type of publication, 3D publication, is contribute for enhancement of tourism.
Anthony?
Yeah, I think if you'd asked the same question maybe 4 years ago, you'd probably get a lot more blockage. But I think COVID changed everything, and museums kind of woke up to they have to offer some kind of digital offering, as well as what they have in the tangible, especially for museums and places like this. So I think you'll find now you won't get as much pushback from organizations, and they see it's a kind of a fundamental thing to market their organizations and sites.
Right. No, that's very important to understand how this pandemic has changed the way we have been thinking about this digital documentation and its potential. Like last question I will pose to Rand. So Rand, the question is the next step after documentation. What should be done to conserve the data that we generate, so that we don't lose it because of the rapid new technological development. So how do we kind of think about conserving digital technology?
Well, let me say that I feel that the documentation should be useful for the conservation intervention, and that the documentation doesn't stop there, because there's always changes or challenges during the conservation intervention. So the documentation doesn't stop at the start of a project or works, but must continue through the whole intervention. So the documentation continues. How to save it? Well, I mean, paper is paper sticks around, but that's not really viable for things that are 3D. I think that some of the other speakers mentioned some of the problems. I mean, first of all, you have that the data can be corrupted. So you can make a copy and you can distribute that copy in multiple places. So you have redundancy. But then there's the problem of the format. And I think in common formats, well, in AutoCAD format, I can open drawings that I started 30 years ago in AutoCAD. So in common formats, this will be viable, that it's saved. Other formats that are emerging, some of the 3D formats that are emerging and changing, I think you have to have a dedication to migration and devote resources to that migration. So someone will keep a copy of the original and then they update it to whatever the newest software and verify it. I think if you have some responsible people to do this, I think ICRAM is well positioned to ensure this happens during the training programs. Other cases, it's very difficult, especially when the project closes in a commercial setting. A project closes and it's over, and it's a shame. But
no, thank you for bringing this issue. This is indeed a challenge, and we have to start thinking about it beyond any project. What to do with that data, how to keep it, and how it can be.
Right.
So with this, I would like to thank all the panelists for their excellent presentations and also for responding to the questions. We have been kind of bulldozing you with lots of questions. So thank you for responding to them. I would like to mention here that ICRAM is really dedicated towards bringing new innovative approaches for conservation and management of built heritage, especially through its program Sustainability and Built Heritage, that responds to increasing impact of global challenges that include disasters, pandemics, climate change, conflicts, and pressures from urbanization and tourism on built heritage. Well, when we talk of built heritage, we talk about all aspects of built heritage, ranging from building sites and historic cities. We will soon be relaunching our international course on conservation of built heritage in 2023. This overarching course, which will be held from March to June next year, will be centered on innovative approaches for built heritage conservation and management aimed at protecting the values while ensuring continuity and evolution within a sustainable development framework. ICRAM, in partnership with Nottingham Trent University and CEPT Ahmedabad, have also been recently coming up with a guide on use of 3D technology for post-earthquake recovery, which Bernadette already talked about. So we are, as an organization, committed to really exploring the ways in this way, in the way these technology can be really used to promote conservation of heritage. Now, before concluding this webinar, I would like to once again express gratitude to all the panelists and also our organizing team here at ICRAM, whom you don't see, but they are behind all this happening. And they have been working hard to bring these webinars to you. So we also thank all the attendees for participating in this webinar and raising important questions. And most importantly, I have to thank my colleague Hirofumi Ikawa, who came up with this topic and has been working very hard to contact you to kind of steer this again, he's not here coming in forward, but he's the real person behind this webinar. So I must acknowledge him as well. So please note that the recorded versions of this webinar will be shortly made available on YouTube channel. It's actually already there. Please note that also recordings of previous webinars are available at ICCROM lecture series page on our website. With this, I would like to actually mention our next webinar, which is going to be held soon, and that is actually an intergenerational conversation on heritage, communities and sustainable development, and especially focused on urban architecture for and by communities. And this will be on 30th November from 1:30 p.m. Rome time and 3:30 p.m. Dubai time. And the more information, the poster that you see here will be available on our website. So if you have time and if you are interested in this topic, you are welcome to join this webinar. Thank you once again to all of you for being with us, and please take care, and we'll see you again soon. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, all of you. Hasta
Thank you.
luego.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Thank you very much. All
Bye.
the best.